Everyone knew that Yoon Da-bin's world revolved around two things: the drama club stage and Kang Min. She met Min in middle school after accidentally gluing her hand to her textbook during a class project. He had been the only one who didn't laugh. Instead, he calmly pried the book from her palm and handed her a tissue. Since then, they had been inseparable. They studied together, skipped school festivals to watch movies, shared ice cream on the way home, and never once ran out of things to say. They weren't dating. They were just each other's person until the summer of senior year, when Da-bin fell in love with someone she was never supposed to. His name was Kang Hyuk, Min's older brother. It began quietly: a borrowed book, a shared umbrella, a conversation in the hallway that lasted 1 minute too long. Hyuk was nothing like Min. Where Min was loud, Hyuk was still. Where Min talked in circles, Hyuk spoke only when necessary. He had eyes that felt older than 18 and a silence that didn't push people away. It pulled them in. Da-bin never thought of him that way. Not really. He was just Hyuk, Min's brother, the guy who rarely came out his room and always wore headphones, even during dinner. But that changed one afternoon in the literature club. Da-bin had joined the club for extra credit. Hyuk was there already, not as a member, just reading in the corner like the world outside the page didn't exist. She sat across from him. At first they didn't speak, but then she noticed he was reading the same book she had memorized in 9th grade. She leaned over the table. That part where the girl disappears in the snow? It's not about death. It's about freedom. He looked up, startled, then said, "You're the first person who got that." From that moment, everything shifted. They didn't flirt. They didn't make jokes. They just kept meeting in that corner, exchanging books, opinions, long silences heavy with things unsaid. And Da-bin started noticing things: how his fingers lingered on the pages he loved, how he tucked his hair behind his ear when he was thinking, how his voice dropped slightly whenever he said her name. She told herself it was nothing until it wasn't. One evening, after a late rehearsal for school play, she ran into Hyuk outside the theater room. It was raining. He was holding a single umbrella, already open. "You'll catch a cold," he said. She hesitated, then stepped beneath it. They walked together in silence, the umbrella too small for the distance between them. When they reached the back gate of school, he stopped walking. She turned to him, and just like that, no warning, no build-up, he kissed her. It was soft, brief, devastating. She didn't sleep that night. The next morning, Min didn't walk with her to school. He didn't text her good morning. At lunch, he sat 2 rows away, staring blankly at his rice. Something had changed, and Da-bin felt it in her chest like a stone. Later that week, she found him waiting for her outside the rehearsal room. Min never waited. He always barged in. But now, he stood with his hands in his pockets, his eyes unreadable. "I saw," he said quietly. She froze. "Saw what?" "You know." She didn't deny it. He looked at her for a long moment, then walked away, and didn't look back. It had only been one kiss. But in the days that followed, it felt like the world had changed forever. Min stopped replying to messages, stopped showing up to drama club rehearsals, stopped speaking to her entirely. Yoon Da-bin kept looking for him in the places they used to share: the empty seat beside her in the cafeteria, the bench outside the school gates, the third desk from the window in the library. All empty now. Her chest hurt in ways she didn't know how to name. Because this wasn't just about a boy. This was about losing her best friend. Hyuk didn't push her. He didn't text her late at night or ask when they'd meet again. He just waited, quietly, like always. And that made it worse. Because with every passing day, Da-bin felt herself pulled in 2 directions: the boy she had fallen for without meaning to, and the friend she couldn't bear to lose. One afternoon, She sat alone on the edge of the stage, legs dangling, script in hand but unread. Hyuk appeared in the wings. She looked up, startled. "I thought you hated school plays." "I do," he said, "but I needed to see you." Her heart stuttered. He walked closer, stopped just out of reach. "I didn't mean to hurt anyone," he said. She nodded. "I know. I tried to stay away. I didn't want you to." Silence fell between them, heavy. Then she asked, barely a whisper, "Do you regret it?" He hesitated. "No." She looked down. "Me neither." The next morning, Min was waiting outside her classroom. He hadn't waited for her since the third grade. She stepped toward him cautiously. He didn't smile. "Can we talk?" They went to the rooftop. The wind was cold. Her hands trembled. He didn't look at her when he spoke. "You knew how I felt, didn't you?" She froze. "What?" "You knew," he repeated, voice raw. "Or at least part of you did." "I didn't," she said. "Not really. You never said." "I didn't think I had to." Silence stretched between them. He turned to her then, eyes red. "I've loved you since you glued your hand to a textbook and told me you were allergic to embarrassment." A small, broken laugh escaped her lips. "Min, you were all I had," he said, voice cracking. "Now I have no one." Her breath caught. "I didn't mean to choose between you." "But you did." He walked away before she could answer. And this time, he really didn't look back. Da-bin stopped going to literature club. She couldn't walk into that room without seeing Hyuk's shadow in every chair, every page, every silence. She didn't go to rehearsal either. Not for 3 days. The lead actor panicked. The director threatened to replace her. And Jisoo, her classmate, finally snapped, "Is your love life more important than the whole play?" Maybe it was. But Da-bin knew she had made this mess. She needed to fix it. She went to Hyuk's house on a Sunday afternoon. Not to see him. To see Min. She rang the bell twice before the door opened. It was Hyuk. They stared at each other for a long time. Then she said, "I need to talk to him." "He's not home." "You're lying." He didn't argue, just stepped aside. She walked in. Min was in the living room, headphones on, staring at a muted TV screen. She sat down beside him. "I'm not asking you to forgive me." He said nothing. "I'm asking you to remember what we were. Before all this." He didn't turn to look at her. "I remember. That's the problem." She swallowed. "Do you hate me?" "No," he said. "Then why won't you talk to me?" He pulled off the headphones slowly. "Because every time I see you, I feel like I'm losing again." Tears burned behind her eyes. "I miss you." He nodded. "I miss you too." But he didn't reach for her. That night, Hyuk showed up outside her apartment. He didn't say anything, just stood there with his hands in his coat pockets, breath visible in the cold. She opened the door. "You shouldn't be here." "I know." She didn't step aside. He didn't ask her to. He just looked at her and said, "I don't want you to hate me too." Her heart twisted. "I could never." He nodded once, then turned and walked away. Rehearsal week returned in full force. Da-bin threw herself into the script, into the choreography, into helping the costume team with last-minute repairs. No one asked what had happened, but they all saw the difference. She was quieter, more focused, less playful, like something inside her had dimmed. The night before the play, she stayed late alone on the stage. She recited her monologue to an empty room. "If I could go back, I'd choose differently. Not to avoid pain, but to avoid losing someone who mattered before I knew how much." Opening night arrived. The school auditorium buzzed with whispers and camera flashes. Parents, students, teachers, all gathered to watch the final performance of Gunhwa High's drama club seniors. Da-bin stood backstage in costume, shaking. She peeked through the curtain once and froze. Min was in the front row, alone, arms crossed, watching the stage. Her breath hitched. The cue came. She stepped into the lights. The lights were blinding. The auditorium was silent. Da-bin took one step forward, then another. Her lines came automatically, but her heart beat louder than any of them. Somewhere in the second row, she knew Min was watching. His gaze, even unreadable, burned into her skin. She pushed through the first act, voice steady, timing precise. The audience laughed at the jokes, clapped at the transitions, and her castmates gave her space to breathe. But in her mind, she kept seeing flashes. Min holding her backpack strap. When they crossed the street in middle school. Min waiting in the hallway during her first stage audition. Min laughing in the library while she whispered the wrong answers on purpose. And then, Hyuk, his hand trembling slightly when he reached for hers in the rain. The way his voice had dropped when he whispered, "I wanted to stay away, but I couldn't." The silence between them that had always meant more than words. She was losing both. And tonight was the end. The final act approached. Her character was meant to make a grand confession, not of love, but of regret. The monologue had been written weeks ago, but Da-bin changed it. In the moment, on stage, in front of everyone, her voice softened as she took center. I once had someone who held my world in their hands without knowing it. I laughed with them before I knew how much I needed their voice. And then, when I looked away for 1 second, I lost them. The theater held its breath. I fell in love by accident, and I hurt someone I never meant to hurt. But I would do it all again if it meant feeling something that real, even for a moment. Silence. Then applause. But her ears weren't listening. She was watching Min. He didn't clap at first. He just stared, and then slowly raised his hands, and clapped once, twice, until the whole room echoed with it. Backstage, the cast was in chaos. Costumes flying, tears, laughter, photos, hugs. Da-bin slipped away to the far end of the wings, where the velvet curtain cast long shadows. She sat on the floor, breathing hard. Found you. She looked up. Min stood there, hands in his jacket pockets. She stood, unsure. He didn't speak. So she did. Thank you for coming. He shrugged. It was good. That's it. He smiled faintly. I've seen every play you've done since 9th grade. This one hurt the most. So yeah, it was good. Her eyes welled up. Min, I know. She hesitated. I miss us. I miss us too. He took a step forward, then another, then stopped. You don't have to explain, he said. Not anymore. Why not? Because I know what love looks like when it's not mine. Da-bin's chest tightened. I never meant to. I know, he repeated. Then quietly, go. She turned, and there he was, Hyuk, standing at the back exit of the backstage hallway, still in his school uniform, hair damp from the walk, chest rising and falling like he had run the whole way. She walked toward him, stopped just short. They stared at each other for a moment. Min watched from a distance, silent, still, strong. Hyuk stepped forward first. I was scared you'd ask me to disappear again. She shook her head. I never wanted you to disappear. I just wanted to stop hurting everyone. I know. I can't do this if it means losing you both. Hyuk looked at Min. Da-bin did too. Min didn't speak. He just gave the smallest nod, a single breath of surrender. And Hyuk, with eyes full of emotion, turned back to her. What do you want? She reached for his hand. You. They kissed in the shadows of the stage curtains. Soft, shaky, real. And when they pulled away, they found Min walking toward them. No anger, no sarcasm, just a tired smile. I'm not okay, he said, but I will be. Da-bin's eyes filled again. I'm sorry. He looked at Hyuk. Take care of her. She believes in love because you made her believe in herself. Hyuk nodded, and then the three of them stood in silence. The siblings, the friend, the girl who had tried to hold on to everything and almost lost it all. Min turned to leave, but stopped. Da-bin. She looked at him. He smiled bittersweet. Go. I'll survive. Fall gave way to winter. The heat lamps went up in the school courtyard. Scarves and padded jackets became uniforms of their own. And somehow, everything felt colder, even though Da-bin's heart was finally warming again. The play was over. But something bigger had begun. Her friendship with Min was still fractured, hanging in the air like an unfinished sentence. But they smiled now, in class, in passing, in moments that once would have been filled with tension or silence. It wasn't the same, but it wasn't gone. And with Hyuk, it was real. No more hiding in hallways. No more dodging glances at lunch. No more wondering what came next. They started walking home together, talking about nothing, then everything, holding hands when they thought no one was looking. And then, even when people were, the rumors spread fast. The drama club girl is dating Kang Hyuk? Isn't he her best friend's brother? Didn't they fight about that or something? But Da-bin didn't care. For the first time in her life, she wasn't acting on a stage. She was living. Hyuk was still Hyuk, still quiet, still hard to read, still capable of going hours without saying a single unnecessary word. But she learned him. She learned that his silences weren't cold. They were thoughtful, that when he looked away during a conversation, he was usually thinking about the right way to respond, that his small actions, the way he always walked on the outside of the sidewalk or carried her bag when it got too heavy, were louder than any speech. And he learned her too. He listened when she talked too fast about rehearsals, watched her rehearse alone after school, never interrupting, held her wrist gently whenever she doubted herself, and said, "You're already more than enough." But real love has its own seasons, and winter brought more than snow. It brought college decisions, family expectations, unspoken fears about what came after high school. They sat together one afternoon in the empty library. Snow piled against the windows outside. Da-bin was quiet. Hyuk finally asked, "What's on your mind?" She stared at her notebook. "I don't know where I belong." "You belong wherever you choose to be." "That's the problem," she whispered. "I don't know how to choose." He didn't rush her, didn't try to fix it, just took her hand under the table. And for now, that was enough. One afternoon, Min joined her in the theater room. He hadn't been there since before the fallout. She looked up from the costume rack, startled. "I didn't think I'd see you in here again." He smiled faintly. "Someone told me you needed help with the stage lights." She raised an eyebrow. "Hyuk." "No, Jisoo." She blinked. "Okay, that's actually worse." He laughed, really laughed. And for a second, it felt like middle school again. He helped her adjust the spotlights, dragged old props out of storage, and teased her for never labeling anything properly. They didn't talk about what had happened, not directly. But later, as they stacked folding chairs, Min said, "You know, it wasn't just you I lost." She turned to him. "It was Hyuk too. My brother, we were never best friends, but we were close enough. And then it felt like he picked you instead of me." Her eyes stung. "I didn't want anyone to pick anyone." He nodded slowly. "I know that now." She reached out unsure. He let her hug him, and when they pulled apart, he said, "Don't lose him just because you're scared to keep him." The next day, Hyuk found her on the rooftop after class. She was pacing, eyes red, hands stuffed in her jacket. "I thought you might be here," he said. She turned quickly. "I'm scared," she admitted, "of college, of losing this, of messing it all up again." He walked to her. "You're allowed to be scared." She nodded, trying to smile. "I keep thinking maybe we're just a high school story, something that ends in June." Hyuk's voice was quiet. "Only if we let it." She looked up. He took something from his pocket. It was a folded piece of notebook paper. She opened it slowly. It was a list. Small things. Books we haven't read yet. Places we said we'd visit. Plays we never got to see. Meals we never finished. Word we never got to say. At the bottom, he had written, "Let's not leave things unfinished." Winter melted into spring. Da-bin was accepted into the performing arts program at university in Seoul. Hyuk, a year ahead, was already preparing for his final entrance interview at a medical science program. They studied side by side. Late nights at convenience store tables. Quiet moments in borrowed libraries. Hope written in highlighter ink and lined paper margins. And still, the love between them grew. Slower now. Steadier. More rooted. The night before graduation, Da-bin stood again on the school stage. This time, not for play. For the ceremony rehearsal. The auditorium was empty. Lights low. Her school uniform neatly pressed. She stepped to the center and whispered, "I'm not the same girl who thought she had to choose between love and loyalty." Behind her, she heard a familiar voice. "I'm not the same guy who thought staying silent would keep people safe." She turned. Hyuk stood at the edge of the aisle. They met in the middle of the stage. He held out his hand. "You ready?" She took it. "I always was." Graduation morning came with warm skies and the smell of ink from freshly printed diplomas. Students swarmed the courtyard in navy robes and stiff caps, their uniforms hidden beneath layers of memories. Teachers handed out advice like candy. Parents clutched cameras and handkerchiefs. Friends scrawled last-minute goodbyes across sleeves in yearbooks. Da-bin stood near the gym entrance, holding her cap in both hands. She had spent years waiting for this moment, the final bow, the curtain call of high school life. But now that it was here, it didn't feel like an ending. It felt like a second opening scene. She looked up and saw Min across the crowd, helping a younger student adjust their sash. He caught her gaze, nodded, smiled, and turned back to his task. That moment said everything. The ceremony began with speeches, too long, too formal, and applause that blurred into the hum of the summer air. When Da-bin's name was called, she walked to the stage with measured steps, not too fast, not too hesitant. She accepted her certificate, bowed, and looked out at the sea of faces. And in the third row, just past a cluster of parents and faculty, she saw him, Hyuk, not clapping, just watching her, like she was the only thing in the room that mattered. After the ceremony, she skipped the photo line and headed straight for the back of the building. The old courtyard, overgrown now, but still familiar, was quiet. She stood beneath the tree where she and Min used to wait for the bus, where Hyuk had once handed her a book with a single post-it note on the last page. Sometimes silence says more than confession. Now there was no more silence, only footsteps. She turned. Hyuk stood there, holding a small paper envelope. No words at first. Then, "I wasn't sure if I should come." "You should have come sooner," she said. "I wanted to give you space." "You're not space, Hyuk. You're the reason I didn't give up." He stepped closer. "Then don't give up now." She opened the envelope. Inside, a photo from the literature club that first week. She was blurry in the background, mid-laugh. He was in focus, book in hand, but looking only at her. "You kept this." "I printed it that day." "Why?" "Because it was the first time I knew something was going to matter before it even started." Da-bin's eyes filled with tears. She looked up. "I don't want to leave you behind." "You're not. We'll be in different cities. Trains exist. Life's going to get harder." "I know." She hesitated. "I'm scared." He stepped forward, held her face in both hands. "I'm not." Then he kissed her, soft, slow, certain. That night, Min hosted a small gathering at his house for their friends. Da-bin arrived late, unsure she should even come. But when she walked through the door, he waved her over like nothing had ever broken between them. They shared snacks, laughed at old group photos, argued about which teacher was most terrifying, And eventually, she found herself alone with him in the kitchen. He handed her a glass of juice. "No soda," she teased. He shrugged, trying to be healthy. She hesitated, then asked, "Are we okay?" He leaned against the counter. "We're not the same, but I think that's okay. I still miss how easy it used to be." "I don't." She blinked. "Because now," he said, "we actually know who we are." He looked at her, not with longing, but with something more powerful. "Peace. You chose him," he said, "and that hurt. I know, but you also never lied to me about it. I didn't know how. I'm proud of you, you know." She smiled. "I'm proud of you, too." Then, just before they rejoined the others, he said, "Go. I'll survive." Summer stretched long and golden. Da-bin moved into a tiny apartment near her university. Hyuk helped her carry boxes, hung shelves, labeled every drawer with his handwriting. They called each other late at night, just to hear one another breathe. Sometimes they fought, about nothing, about everything. But they never stopped showing up, never stopped choosing, even when it would have been easier not to. One autumn weekend, they met at the river near their old school. No special occasion, just a habit they couldn't shake. They sat on the grass, knees touching, watching the water move like time. Hyuk handed her a book. "Again," she laughed. "This one's different." She opened the cover. Inside was a handwritten dedication to the girl who made the silence louder and the noise bearable. Da-bin leaned her head on his shoulder. "What happens when this version of our story ends?" He laced their fingers together. "Then we write a new one." Back at the house, Min stood in his room, staring at an old photo. The three of them, a school festival, faces full of innocence and possibility. He didn't cry. He didn't smile. He just nodded to himself, then tucked the photo into a drawer, not out of pain, but to make space for what came next. Because not all love stories are meant to be easy. Some begin in silence, some end in applause, and some, the ones that stay, are written in every small moment that no one else sees. In the look between two people at the edge of goodbye, in the hug that doesn't ask for forgiveness, only understanding, in the words, "Go, I'll survive," and in the courage to love anyway.